I'd like to welcome you to something new that I'm trying out called Let's Talk About It Tuesday. And I have Kyle Kruso here from Legacy Mortgage, and he's going to talk about just the basic things you need for a pre-approval for a mortgage, because that's what I get mostly. When people come to me, I have to send them to Kyle, but I like to give them just a little bit more information so they're prepared.
Yep.
How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing fantastic, Ardis. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I think this is going to be a great tool for buyers to use. And, I've been doing this for, about 11 and a half years now in the mortgage industry. So we'll get into some good topics here to help these guys out, I think.
Okay. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. I have a few questions for you, and then we'll go from there. So
Cool.
Number one question, what documents are needed?
So the documents that are needed once you get the pre-qual process rolling here, pretty simple. So it's not as much as people think, but let's say you're a W-2 employee and you're hourly or salary and you might get overtime bonuses. Really all we need is 1 month's worth of pay stubs. So if you're getting paid bi-weekly or twice a month, you usually need about 2 pay stubs. You need 2 years of W-2s, not the tax returns, just the W-2s that your employer gives you every year. And then 2 months of bank statements. So I kind of call it my 2-2-2 rule, 2 pay stubs, 2 W-2s, 2 bank statements. And then, from there, that pretty much gets us what we need to know about income and assets. And then we get you that, fully verified underwritten approval letter, which is going to make your offer stand out quite a bit versus some other ones.
Okay. That sounds pretty straightforward. So what is a good credit score to entertain to start at looking at a pre-approval for a mortgage?
So you know what? Credit score is really lender specific. So I know about the lowest I've ever seen and worked with, FHA starts out at about 580. So if you have near a 580, even if it's a little bit lower, in a lot of situations, we can go ahead and, plug into our simulator what can be done to get your credit score up the fastest. And then that might get you over the 580. That might get you over the 620, which that's the minimum for FHA usually. 620, that's when it gets a lot easier. The 580, there's some extra hoops to jump through. Nothing crazy, but to answer your question, 580 is kind of where we can start at. For something like a down payment assistance from Mishta, they like it to be at 640. But other than that, it really just depends on your down payment, how much you're putting down. But about 580 is the lowest, we can go. So, I know I talk to people say, well, my credit's only like a 650. I probably can't do anything. It's like, no, like you're really good. Even if you're lower than that, we have options.
Yeah. I tell people all the time when they connect with me, they say, my credit's not right or this and that. I'll say, well, you don't really know unless I get you to a mortgage professional where you're at and then where you need to be that can help guide.
Exactly.
That's good to know. About how long does it take to apply, like getting all these documents over to you?
So basically what happens is when you send me a client over, they get a hold of me and we can either get the information done over the phone, very easy. It's a quick conversation to go over income, assets, and credit, or they can fill out an application on our secure website to go over income, assets, and credit, and that comes right back to me. I work 7 days a week, so if I'm open on weekends or whenever nights, if I get that application back, I'm going to dive right into it usually, and then that doesn't take me long to figure out. We're talking maybe 20-30 minutes, and then from there, as long as everything looks good, we've got a credit report that looks great, everything goes through our underwriting system. That's when I say, hey, you are pre-qualified. And like I said, that probably takes maybe a couple hours max. And then from there, I request the documents from the client. And usually people can get those documents. It's pretty easy to get them. A lot of these HR websites these days, if they can give me those documents back same day, if it's early enough, we can get you a verified approval letter usually in that same day. So to be safe, I would say 24 hours just in case, if it's later in the day and we got to hear back from underwriting, but very quick, honestly, 24 hours or less to get an actual approval letter.
Okay. So you got to come with the documents and Kyle will get right to work.
Yep.
When you get approval, how long does the pre-approval is it effective for?
You're valid for 90 days from that credit pull. So once the 90 days hits, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, if you're actively looking, I'll say, hey, we should probably pull another credit report just to make sure that, there was not debt added or anything came down with the credit. And that gets you another 90 days. And I do like to preface with this, when you are looking to buy a house, even if you're just pre-approved, you don't have a house yet, do all you can to not, open up new lines of debt or, buy a nice boat or a nice sports car. always talk to your lender before you do anything, even if it's just opening up a new credit card, because believe it or not, that could tip the scales one way or the other. And especially taking it a step further, obviously this is down the road, but when you do have a house in process, wait to buy the furniture, wait to buy the appliances, until you close, just to be safe. But to answer your original question, you're good for 90 days on an additional approval.
I like that you went there, because that was going to lead into one of my later questions, which was what could make a pre-approval amount change, like job changes, credit issues, and large purchases. So
yeah,
it's very important when you're looking. Please don't change what's going on.
Yes, exactly.
I know there's different loan options for people. So based on those different loan options, what are the minimum down payment amounts?
So for FHA, even down to 580, the minimum down payment is 3.5%. As far as conventional goes, it's a little different. So with conventional, if you are a first-time home buyer, you can get away with 3% down on conventional. So anybody is a first-time home buyer if they haven't owned a house in the last 3 years. So if you owned a house 4 years ago and you've been sold it and been renting, you can technically get away with that 3%. If you have owned a house in the last 3 years, 5% would be the minimum down on conventional. VA loans for veterans, we do a lot of those. That's 0 down. And MISHDA, same thing. And MISHDA goes through FHA. It's 3.5% down payment, but you get $10,000 to go towards your down payment and closing costs. So good rule of thumb, I always say, is about 3 to 3.5% would be 3 to 5% is minimum down payment. So
okay, that's good to know. First time home buyer rule, where if you haven't owned in 3 years, you can apply for those benefits.
Yeah.
One last question. When you get the pre-approval process, does that involve a hard credit check?
So I do a soft one initially just to get an idea. And if the credit's not where it needs to be, we can put a game plan together still to get it up. But once the soft inquiry is in and we got all the documents and everything looks good and we're going to get the approval, then we'll do the hard pull. Then you're good for the 90 days from that point on.
Okay. Is there anything special that you'd like to let people know about you and your services or anything like that?
Yeah, one thing I do want to add, and I wanted to talk about today, and we kind of briefly touched over it, is just a couple myths when it comes to buying a house. The biggest one is I hear it all the time, like, oh, I haven't been with my employer for 2 years. Total misconception. We only require 2 years of income, and it can be with 5 different employers. And as long as you got a 2-year work history, and even school, like high school diploma counts as a 2-year work history. As long as you are working at a job, we can use that income and qualify you. That's all we really need. So a lot of people, I think, miss out on that because they think they have to be with their current employer for 2 years. Another big thing I think people miss out a lot as well is, when you are, trying to buy a house and maybe funds are a little bit tight, you don't have a ton saved up. Those first-time homebuyer programs that we offer are great. Like with MISHDA, up to $10,000 down. We have an FHA loan as well that gives you a 3.5% loan to go towards your down payment. So that's money you don't have to come up with, and you have your money saved up for stuff you might need to do with the house, or put towards a larger down payment. So definitely not having the funds, would not be an excuse. There's different solutions for everybody. So like you said earlier, you don't know if you don't try. So get a hold of Ardis, get a hold of myself, and we'll make sure we're giving you the professional touch, and you know exactly where you are. There's no ballpark numbers. Like, this is firm stuff that we're talking.
Okay, I like that. And then that's something I didn't know either about being able to use high school work, and then if you're going straight into work and you have good credit and things like that, you have some parents who can help you get some money, because what better gift than home ownership for your young adult. So.
Exactly. And it's not, to add on that, it's not detrimental to change your job either, as long as you're not going to be self-employed, because you do need 2 years of tax returns to show that income, as well as let's say you're a W-2 salaried employee and you're changing a job where it's mostly commission, then you need 2 years for that as well. So that's another myth people say too, is like, if you can change jobs and process, as long as it's your hourly going to another hourly, or going to salary, or staying with salary, it's fine.
Okay. That's good to know. I really appreciate you, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining me, and hopefully we come back and educate people more so we can get more homeowners.
Yeah, we'll be doing topics like this all the time for you guys. There's plenty to talk about on this. And if you have any questions, obviously with real estate, you know who to call, Ardis, and with mortgage stuff, myself.
All right. See you guys later.
See you guys.